Would you believe it's been 50 years since the old Irish English Dictionary was given a makeover? The old girl is showing her age now. Look for Internet Podcast or Amazeballs, Ask Gaeilge, and there's nothing. Joining us now is the project manager for the latest version, Cathal Convery. Cathal, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning.
50 years.
Yes, indeed.
Very hard to believe, isn't it?
Yes, it's a long gap. I would say actually there have been some smaller dictionaries published in the intervening period, both by Forres na Gaeilge and by other companies. But since we had a large, major English-Irish dictionary, it's been over 50 years, which is a very long time.
Reluctance to engage with the modern world, is it? For the
I don't think so. I think it was initially a question of resources, because that was published in 59 and the Irish English Dictionary was published then in 78. So in the intervening period, they would have been working on that, and even more so than now, probably resources were not too much available. Since then, there has been quite a gap. That said, there is a website which is maintained by Forres na Gaeilge for terminology, so that any new terminology that comes up is available to the public on an ongoing basis.
Right. Because a fair bit's happened, that we would have been reaching for new words for, if you go back to 63, the Cuba crisis has, or Grassy Knoll, for instance, in JFK's assassination. I don't know if there was an Irish phrase for that, or all the drug stuff with the Beatles and the Stones, and on the bong, or whatever.
Well, the whole way English has changed. You're quite right. If you just look at the way words have changed, for example, Twitter, which meant a totally different thing, probably was used mainly by bird watchers 50 years ago, but now it's the first thing you think of is something else altogether. So it has changed, and the other thing is that the way language was tended to be used in dictionaries was quite formal, not just in the English-Irish Dictionary of the time, but all dictionaries tended to put in how they would like people to speak rather than reflecting how people would speak. So even more casual or slangy stuff, not to even talk about any vulgar terms.
So we will. What kind of stuff would they have? I mean, I saw one phrase, go to the devil or Dickens.
Yeah. Well,
when was the last time that was used generally? Generally,
indeed, Well, I actually, funny enough, I looked up Twitter in the Old English-Irish Dictionary, and it has a phrase there, she was all of a Twitter, which struck me as quite dated in two senses. First of all, I don't think people would say much anymore for meaning that you're all nervous and excited. And secondly, the fact that she was all of a Twitter, because it assumed that this mainly applied to women, even though I tend to get all of a Twitter when I have to speak on the radio. But we would have the Irish for that is scetamini, which a lot of people would know to be sort of excited or nervous, and we will have that in our dictionary, but you'll be able to look it up under things like to have something having a buzz about it, or to be excited and things like that. So the dictionary itself was excellent at its time, and it has a lot of very good Irish in it. But the difficulty is, if you want to look up the English for it, you're not going to be looking up the archaic.
The world has really changed out of recognition over the last 50 years. When you think about it, computers hardly existed in the early 60s.
Absolutely.
Man hadn't landed on the moon. It's just the pace of change has just become exponential.
Yes.
And to try and keep up with that. Was there never a clamour before this to try and...
There have been, again, I'm working on the project for the last 5 years, so I'm not sure why it wasn't addressed before then. Certainly Forres na Gaeilge, since it was set up at the end of the 90s, has been very anxious to get to grips with it. Probably it was an issue of resources, like it often is. And
how do you actually do it when you do decide that there are phrases or words going around that we need to have an Irish equivalent for? Who decides? Because sometimes there's no real basis in the Irish language that you can apply to it. It's a whole new thing. How do you do? Do you try and get a similar sounding word, or what do you do?
That depends on whether it's a technical term or whether it's common language, ordinary language. If it's a technical term, we have a terminology committee on Coiste Termita and Forres na Gaeilge. Now, sometimes they would, things like, say, teletexting or telecommuting, they would have a set of rules like telefiche, so it would be teletext for sound, for example, for teletexting. So they would take the words for text and the existing prefix for tele and put those together. Now, when you're talking about ordinary language, that's a lot different. So what we have done is we have asked native speakers to read through the English side of the dictionary and to look at how they would say that spontaneously in Irish. So, for example, if you are looking at something like banging your head against a brick wall, they might say snávan I gasa, which means literally swimming against a current or swimming against a waterfall.
So that's not a direct translation. That's just kind of going, well, in Ireland, we would have said this.
Well, as I say, it depends very much on whether it's a general thing you're trying to convey, or again, if you have, say, something like haircut, the meaning of haircut in the last number of years is totally different to what it was. Now, you have the word bara in Irish, which we use for bara gruiga, but again, like, that works quite well when you're talking about banking. You talk about bara to implement that on the value of property or whatever. So, as I say, if it's technical, excuse me, it may actually involve composing a new word.
Right.
But if it's
composing a new word sounds fantastic, may I say. That's like bringing your, guess like having a star named after you. Like, well, I composed my own word. That's really, who does that? Who are word composers?
Well, it would be mainly, usually it is technical terms, so that would be the Terminology Committee on Cuiste Termíochta. And as I say, sometimes it involves using existing prefixes. Sometimes it's a matter of combining existing Irish words. For example, one I like is live streaming, which is bio hruhu, which is from bio, and shru, which means live and stream. So like they work very well, doesn't it? Without at all.
Because it has to have a nice tone to it. It has to sound like a nice thing to say, not a construct.
Yes, well, another one I like a lot actually is, cookie, as in the file that's placed on your computer. One of the Irish versions for that is cuach, which is good if you're an English speaker because it sounds a little bit like cookie. But it's also the Irish for cuckoo, which I think is great because, of course, that comes in uninvited into the nest, just like a cookie comes onto your computer without you.
Bit of poetry in there, isn't there?
Well, I think it's a nice translation, I must say.
Who are these people? They sound like they know their way around a bit when it comes to words.
Yeah, well, they do. Usually it's people in various different domains. So, for example, if, say in the area of broadcasting, if someone requests a number of new terms to be put into Irish for broadcasting, you would have people who have expertise and would understand, first of all, what the terms mean in English.
Because when you do go, I mean, when I was doing the leaving, a thing that really struck me was some of the books we read. Toriach's Diarmaid Gráinne was beautiful, and Duel, Liam Flaherty's Duel, was stunning. And the one time I really felt a great graw, to use the Irish for the language, was reading it like that. So you want to try not dilute that and still bring something beautiful to the table. That's quite a tall order, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And sometimes also people tend to say, "Oh, why does telephone or telefiche?"
There's one in there. Why do we use the word zoo, Z-U for zoo, instead of Gardaí na Hainmhe?
Well,
Garden of the Animals.
People use both. And one thing is, you can't stop how people use the language. It's like the way in France the word for internet is l'internet. Now, people will use whatever one they want to use, but one thing that people may not realise is that sometimes it's not actually slavishly imitating English, because an awful lot of the prefixes like tele and micro and things like that, they come from Latin and Greek. And you will find, say, in French and Italian, you have telefono and telephone. So it's not as if Irish is actually imitating English. It's actually, there are a lot of Greek and Latin influences on all the European languages. So they would be used. Sometimes, if it's something foreign, it just comes into currency, and that happens in all languages. Like in the last few years, we've all gotten very fond of our cafe lattes and our panini, and people are not clamouring to say, well, we should say milky coffee in English instead of a cafe latte. So that happens in all languges.
There's no getting around that. There's some really interesting ones coming in, though. I see hornball. Where on earth did that come from?
That's a slang term. I know it's in currency in Ulster. I wouldn't use it myself.
No, I wouldn't be banding it around. Can you say it? Arcacon.
Iarcacán.
Iarcacán.
Yeah, well, Irk is the Irish word for horn in all its senses.
Really?
Yes.
You live and learn.
As in horn on a cow or
really?
A bull. Yeah.
But you know, Rodrigo or Gabriela, you know them, the Mexican
yes,
duo?
Indeed,
they have a fascination with swear words in Irish. They've been...
Have they?
Yeah.
I didn't know that now.
Are they Brazilian or Mexican?
Mexican, I was listening.
Yeah, I have interviewed them a few times. They can't write down enough of them.
Really?
They find it fascinating, yeah. Casual sex. Nas Gan Canela.
Ghanaius,
excuse me.
Yeah.
Is that sex without conditions?
Literally, yes, it is. It is.
That's lovely.
It is. Well,
sex without conditions.
You get the drift for sure.
Yeah. What's to have sex with somebody? Is it?
Yeah.
Beg Egbula Kralov.
Egbula Kraken, which Kraken is skin, literally. So.
Retweet. I'll get you off that one as quickly as I can.
Tweet all, yeah.
Tweet all. That sounds good. Podcasting.
Yeah.
Podquaila.
Podquaila, yeah.
Quaila, yours is much more good. Ghost estate.
Yeah.
A start
Treige.
If this was the oral Irish test, I've failed miserably. Well, kicked out the door. It's not coming back to me. People said it will come back to you. It's not.
Well, we will actually have sound files with our online dictionary, so you can click on a button and hear exactly how to pronounce it.
For that.
So, and you're doing pretty well, I have to say.
I stumble. I was saying to you, we were talking before that we came on properly, and I was saying that it seems to be like a mathematical thing goes through your head when you look at Irish. You start thinking, does the D or the H make that part quiet and all this thing? Instead of just saying the words, you have a set of rules you initially start to apply and get wrong, it seems to me.
Well, I think the most important thing is for people to say it, and it doesn't matter if they don't say it perfectly. It's like the way a French accent speaking English can sound quite attractive to us. As long as you understand what the person is saying, that's the key thing. So if people want to speak it, and my own broad Dublin accent gets sometimes imposed on my version of Irish as well.
You sound like you have it very nicely to me, may I say. Thank you very much for coming in. When's it going to be in our shops?
It'll be available free online, actually, at the end of the year. Yeah. So it'll be totally free.
The day going in and buying it and having it on the top shelf, that's gone as well, is it?
Well, there will be a printed version later, but because most people tend to use online versions, we reckon we'd start with that. So that'll be available to everybody.
Look forward to a call. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.